Good morning, everyone. My name is Serena Lewandowski. I am doing the presentation today about the food safety presentation for the summer feeding program. All right. So once I get all my ducks in a row. All right, so this presentation was made by my coworker, Lauren Gamble. But I'll be doing the presentation today, and she is present. Say hi, Lauren.
Hi.
Okay, so we're just going to go through a general presentation regarding food safety. So food safety, do you think foodborne illness is a concern for you and me? Yes. So the CDC estimates that about 48 million illnesses, or 1 in 6 people. There's also 128,000 hospitalizations, even 3,000 deaths per year. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal, foodborne illness. And since you are going to be serving the public during your summer feeding program, it's going to be important that you guys try to is there an acceptable amount of foodborne illness? The answer is no. So we want to completely rid the chance of foodborne illness from serving our kids, of course. We want to keep them as safe as possible. So we're going to go through a couple of risk factors. So some goals and responsibilities for you guys is going to be, what is the goal of managers and operators for food service establishment? So it's to produce safe, quality food for customers, or your kids that you're going to be feeding. Who has the responsibility of providing safe food to the consumer? So, of course, you have a part in that, but actually it's everyone's responsibility the entire way of the food line. So that goes from the person growing the vegetables, making sure that they use the right products on treating those, to the people, washing the vegetables for sale, for putting them in the supermarket, making sure the supermarket employees treat it properly. So the entire chain is a responsibility. So what does the FDA say about food safety? The FDA has attributed nearly all foodborne outbreaks or food poisonings to one of 5 categories. These are called the risk factors because they pose a risk to the public through food. So those risk factors: food from unapproved sources, improper cooking temperatures, improper holding temperatures, contaminated equipment, poor employee health and hygiene. We'll go into detail about all of these points. First one, food from an unapproved source. So from your meat to your veggies to your herbs and your spices even, they all go through a certain evaluation to make sure that they do come from a safe, inspected source. So for you guys, that would basically mean, your cousin might make the best chocolate cake in the county, but her kitchen and her 9 cats might not be inspected. So we might not want to be serving that kind of food to our kids. We want to make sure that we're only serving approved sources. So that would be, stuff you buy from Walmart or from your vendor potentially. Or for some of you guys, I believe you'll actually receive your brown bags basically from a service. So making sure that you only used approved sources for the kids. So the Food Code states that food shall be obtained from sources that comply with law. This means food comes from a source that is regulated in some way, either by the FDA, the USDA, the Alabama Department of Ag, or us, the Health Department. Food prepared in a private home may not be used or offered for human consumption in a permitted food establishment, and you guys are going to be permitted food establishments. The second risk factor we're going to discuss is improper cooking temperature. This is for those of you more so that might be doing like raw chicken or cooking any kind of like maybe fish stick, something that requires a cook temperature. So the food code requires that various foods be cooked to a certain temperature. Why is that? Well, it's because different foods have different levels of microorganisms. So certain temperatures are usually stated for that food cook temp just because that's what is required to kill those pathogens that usually meat item carries. So course, will be like cooking your chicken to 165. So you guys can always reference some good temperature charts if you guys need to make sure that you're getting proper cook temps. The third factor today is going to be improper holding temperatures. So this is where we're going to discuss about the danger zone. So that is the range between 41 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? That's the range when pathogens grow the best. So think about our own body temperature. We're pretty much kind of in that sweet spot for that bacterial growth. So our nice warm bodies are full of water. They're nice environments for bacteria to grow in. Well, it's the same whenever we're holding food for service. So kind of as soon as it leaves refrigeration, it needs to have a method to keep it cold, or it needs to be on a timer so that it is not left out for more than 4 hours. And you guys will be responsible for that by making sure that your logs that you receive from your delivery person are proper. That's what your health department is often going to be asking about, is those receiving logs, or they're going to be taking temperatures maybe on a carton of milk to make sure that it's nice and cold. So your health department will be discussing with you, looking for those kind of records to make sure that that food that you're serving is a proper temperature, and that's because of this improper holding temperature causing foodborne illness. So the mantra, as you guys might have heard if you've ever worked in food service, is keep hot foods hot, keep cold foods cold. All right, continuing. Can you think of any other processes that you might perform in a food establishment that applies to holding temperatures? So there's cooling foods. So let's say that you guys wanted to make something like potato salad. You'd be cooling those potatoes to use to make your salad, maybe even cooling down some boiled eggs to use in the potato salad. So when it comes to cooling, we need to reach that 135. Remember, that's the edge of our danger zone. We want to go through that danger zone as fast as possible. We want to reach 70 degrees within 2 hours. Then we need to reach 70 to 41 within 4 hours. That gives you that 135 to 70 is the most important part. And then that 70 to 41, it's a little bit less strenuous because you have 4 hours to do it. But we do want to make sure we have an active control in place to help that cool down with 70 degrees within that 2 hours. That might be putting it in the fridge. That might be putting it in an ice bath. That might be making sure it's in smaller servings so that it cools properly. All right, there's also potentially reheating for hot holding. So let's say you have green beans left over from yesterday that you're going to dish out. We need to make sure that it reaches 41 degrees to 165 within 2 hours. So that actually does require a bit of control over the food. You need to be making sure maybe the crock pot is not the best method for this situation. We might want to look more at ovens and stove tops as a way of reheating for hot holding. All right, here is a lovely chart of kind of everything. Truthfully, it talks about your danger zone. It talks about your requirements for cooling. It talks about your requirements for reheating. It also has several cook temperatures for items such as poultry, ground meats, seafood, or just whole muscle meat kind of items such as steaks. It also talks about the best temp to hold at, 135 or above. So these are a fantastic item. If you guys wanted to use basically one of these, you can find it on Google Images, no problem. If you guys wanted to use one of these for your kitchen, kind of as a cheat sheet. All right, the fourth factor we're going to be talking about is contaminated equipment. This is dirty dishes. This one's pretty easy to get taken care of. So when we store food, we want to make sure that there's separation between raw and ready-to-eat foods. We want to try to keep food off the floor. We want to try to keep it separated as well. So during receiving, storage, preparation. Here's a lovely picture of a walk-in cooler at a professional restaurant. This is ideal for storage, and you'll see their shelves are up off the ground to help with mopping and etc. So proper storage of equipment would be making sure that it's inverted and protected. So maybe we don't want to leave the bowls face up so that that dust and potentially particles settle into the bowl. We'd like to store that bowl with its bum up in the air, basically, so that it helps protect that food service portion or the food contact area of the bowl. All right, and then washing dishes, our favorite. Wash, rinse, sanitize, air dry. Please notice the air dry. We don't want to use a dirty dish towel to wipe down your dishes. That kind of negates the whole washing process. So we want that wash water to be 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a little bit uncomfortable to the touch. You can also use a lovely food probe thermometer to check the water temperature if you'd like. We want to use clean water for rinsing. We don't want to use dirty water that food particle is just going to stick all over the dish and kind of negate the cleaning process again. We also want to use a sanitizer when we are doing commercial preparation, like you guys are going to be doing. We want to use chemical or heat. So chemicals, some of the most common ones would be bleach, which is what most of my summer feeding programs use, but there's also quat. And then we do want to completely air dry before we stack it. We don't want to trap moisture in between plates and create a breeding ground for bacteria. Here is a lovely manual of a good ware washing setup. You'll notice that the dirty dishes are on one side, the clean dishes are on the other side. We don't want to have our dirty dishes sitting somewhere, wash them, and then put our clean dishes right where those dirty ones were. Again, kind of negating all that cleaning process. All right, the last one, and potentially the most important, poor employee health and hygiene. So we're going to discuss a three-legged stool. If you take a leg away, stool falls over. So employee health, no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food, and hand washing. All of these are important. So for employee health, diseases that are reportable to the health department include norovirus, hepatitis A virus, E. coli, salmonella, shigella. Basically, we just want, these are highly contagious, and they can go through the method of medium of food to create contamination, so, or to spread basically. So we want to make sure that these workers that may have had any of these diseases, or maybe they're caring for a child with one of these diseases, is excluded from the kitchen until they have fully recovered and are no longer contagious. All right, norovirus is going to be the big player though. So norovirus is highly contagious. You may have also heard it called the cruise ship bug. If you've always wondered why you're on a cruise and suddenly you get like sick for 2 days, and it's just because you're kind of trapped in a tin can and those particles are so contagious. So just a very small amount, 18 viral particles. Yeah, that's not much. So on the head of a pin, that can infect more than 1,000 people. So viral particles are tiny. So norovirus, you'll see, is the biggest cause of foodborne illness, or at least the outbreaks. There's also salmonella. That's going to be your improperly cooked chicken, typically, or eggs. Please don't eat the raw cookie dough. Not meant for if you use as raw eggs. Clostridium perfringens. There's Campylobacter, and then there's Staph aureus. All right, so employee health. How do we know? I think a lot of times we might, hey, I'm suffering with Shigella right now. That can sometimes be a little bit difficult to assess. So these are the symptoms that we're going to be looking for exclusion: vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, sore throat with fever, infected cuts or wounds with pus on the hands or wrists, which of course is what you're going to be using for handling food. So I don't want anything on our hands causing issues. So obviously if you are vomiting or you have diarrhea, please don't come to work sick. If one of your employees is running to the bathroom several times, and you might want to ask them, hey, what's going on? And ask them to please stay home if they do happen to have symptoms that might cause the kids to become sick then. All right, so let's talk about the bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. What is ready-to-eat food? Foods that do not require a kill step. So that's cooking to render them safe before being consumed. This can even include things that we might not even think about, like ready-to-eat chicken nuggets. Believe it or not, it is perfectly safe to eat them frozen. They don't require that cook temp, although who would want to eat a frozen chicken nugget? So here's some examples of ready-to-eat foods: deli sandwiches, salads, fruit. No bare hand contact continued. How do I handle ready-to-eat foods if you can't touch them? We can use scoops. We can use spatulas. We can use tongs. We can even use single-use gloves. And deli tissue as well. You may have seen this at a restaurant where you might be getting fried chicken and it uses a piece of deli tissue to pick up that piece of fried chicken, put it in your box. All right, so hand washing. Why is hand washing so important? It's because our hands are gross. Each hand contains 10,000 to 10 million bacteria. Yeah, pretty gross, right? Hand washing reduces the spread of pathogenic organisms that are transmitted through food. Notice it says reduce, does not eliminate. So that's why we use those gloves as well. Whenever we're washing our hands, we're doing a great job, getting a lot of the bacteria off, especially if we properly hand wash. Remember, sing happy birthday while you wash your hands. But we also want to use gloves as well. That's just an additional barrier to make sure that, the stuff that we miss doesn't spread to the food then. Hand washing. So when should you wash your hands? Obviously when they're dirty. So for example, immediately after engaging in activities that contaminate the hands. So touching your cell phone is a big one. Yeah, I know a bunch of you take your phone to the bathroom when you're in the food preparation area. The first thing when you come into the kitchen, you should go ahead and wash your hands before putting on clean single-use gloves for working with food. Hey, notice that. Why do I need to wash my hands if I'm going to wear gloves? Because we don't want to touch the gloves with dirty hands. So before engaging in food preparation, before handling clean equipment and serving utensils, after handling soiled dishes, equipment, or utensils. So again, you don't want to be washing your dirty dishes and then immediately take your hands that are dirty and start putting away your clean dishes. So we want to make sure we're washing our hands in between. All right, when to wash. Changing desks, touching bare human body parts. Your face always itches as soon as you put on your gloves. After using the toilet, after coughing, sneezing, blowing your nose, using tobacco, eating, drinking, after caring for or handling service animals or aquatic pets. So maybe don't feed the fish and then feed the kids. Wash your hands in between. All right, so what was that biggest note? Please don't come to work when you're sick. That would be about the biggest takeaway from this presentation. If you guys have any questions, please feel free. You can reach out to my coworker, Lauren. You can also reach out to me, Serena, as well. Our number is listed here for the Bureau of Environmental Services. Thank you so much for joining us for our presentation today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.